A 28-year-old biological woman who identified as a man shot and killed 3 children and 3 adults at a Christian elementary school in Nashville yesterday before being shot and killed by police. We had few details yesterday when we began the program. Today we know a little bit more, but there's still a lot more left to be known. The shooter was a former student at the school and, according to Nashville police, left behind a manifesto, which has not yet been released. Will this be a wake-up call for our nation to go beyond the normal rhetoric of more gun control or more treatment for mental health, to take our nation back to a point of where it needs to be? A recognition that as we have removed God from society, we see these results? There's so much that we need to turn back to, and so much that we need to get rid of. And if we keep having these same conversations, guess what? It's never going to happen. Well, join me now to discuss this and more is Congressman Michael Cloud. He serves on the House Appropriations Committee. He represents the 27th Congressional District of Texas. Congressman Cloud, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Well, thank you. It's good to be with you here today.
I'm sure yesterday's shooting has been heavy on your heart.
Yeah.
Do you agree that this is a crisis that we cannot police or control our way out of by simply focusing on the instruments that are used in these senseless acts of violence?
Yeah, ultimately, there's not a single common denominator in instances like this. But if there is, what we would see oftentimes it's the breakdown of the family, it's the breakdown of society around these individuals. And it's really horrific, obviously, what's going on. We all want our kids to be safe in schools. But as you mentioned, you go back, you talk to the old timers, so to speak, and a generation ago, and they would talk about how students would go hunting after school and, just the things that were happening. And so you have to ask the question, what's really transpired? What's really making the difference between where we are now as a society and where we have been in the past? And, you can point to a number of different things. We remember people praying in school and the 10 Commandments on the wall. And, at the time, people would have said, almost scoffed, like, hey, if you take those things out, you're not going to see violence like this over schools. And sure, not overnight, but definitely we see, these things transpiring in our schools and in our society. And it's heartbreaking.
I mean, it's almost as if we're seeing our children, and this again, we don't know all the facts, but we do know that this
still early.
This biological female, was attended this school when she was a child. Her parents, apparently, she's in a Christian home. What is leading to the radicalization that we're seeing of our children? I mean, it's not just what's happening in the home, but it's what's happening in the broader culture. And that's really never a part of this conversation. It always tends to be focused on the instrumentality, the instruments that are used. But if it's not guns, it'll be knives. If it's not knives, it'll be cars. If it's not cars, it'll be clubs.
Well, sure. And we have to remember from a policy standpoint, from the government perspective, and a lot of this is understanding there's a number of institutions in society. And a lot of times what we see from the left is to make the government the end all and be all, almost a god in our society, where the government has a definite legitimate role. We should come back and when people break the law and when they harm other people, we definitely need to do something about that. But there's roles for church and community and family and schools, and they each play a different role. And, in bringing up kids and caring for them. And right now what we see is a number of these institutions have been taken over, and we're brainwashing our kids in so many ways, and teaching them to hate the United States, teaching them to hate each other, people that are different from them, and to tear down those walls that we had built generations, literally, of building trust. And we still had some work to go as a country, but we were so far along, the most, if not one of the most diverse countries where we relatively live in peace. And we're seeing a bit of a retraction from that as these really Marxist ideologies get pushed in our schools and in our universities.
But we've even seen the complexity of even reporting this story. I mean, yesterday the AP, which is kind of the gold standard, if you will, of the legacy press, reported that a woman went in, a 28-year-old woman went in and shot 3 children and 3 adults. Well, you know, when it was found out she was transgendered, the story changed. In fact, to today's AP has no gender identification. And as you're reading through the story, it's hard to try to figure out who's who in the story. And in fact, in the USA Today, they ran a correction in their story today about how it says Nashville law enforcement authorities have been, they actually said that they had misgendered this woman. And so they did a correction that she is not a woman, she is a transgender man. I mean, this is crazy. This is a part of the moral and the social chaos that's being fueled in this country.
Yeah, obviously the incident in itself and the lives that were lost, a horrific incident. Seeing the media's reaction to it is, as you said, very absurd and kind of showing the absurdity of the times really that we're in, where, you know, and really it's a departure from what we understood is there is truth in this world. You know, one of the committees I'm on in this COVID select committee investigating COVID origins, and just how, you know, the pursuit of science was a pursuit of let's try to get the truth. And we saw that completely put to the wayside. And now we see, you know, in some of the basic ideas that were being, you know, there's just an abandonment of truth that if it doesn't fit into your political philosophy or what you're trying to get done from a political perspective, a lot of times, you know, people just abandon that, and it creates confusion, it creates chaos in society, and you know, it's really eroding the fabric of what's been truly this wonderful American experiment.
Michael, let me ask you this question then. I mean, you're a member of Congress, you look at facts, you make decisions, public policies based upon those facts. I mean, that's how we have to operate.
Right.
How can we find real solutions if we don't have truth and we can't even agree on what truth is?
No, and that's the thing, and at least agree that there is a truth. You know, before, you know, you look at a generation ago, we might disagree on an issue, but the discussion was trying to find a place of truth. Let's have this discussion until we figure out what's real, and make our decisions based on that. But when truth becomes moldable and it can be whatever you want it to be, and people talk about your truth now, and you know, it becomes whatever it needs to be in that circumstance to push your agenda forward. That's a very bad place to be as a society, and it certainly makes getting things done from a policy perspective, you know, across the aisle, so to speak.
How do you find common ground? How do you find common ground in that setting?
Exactly. Yeah, there's a difference when you can, you know, okay, we're looking at this from a different perspective. Let's work together to get to the same thing. But when you can't even acknowledge that there is a truth to be found, and that you're going to change truth, you're going to change science, you're going to change facts, you're going to change whatever it needs to be to fit whatever your agenda is, then we have a really troublesome place in our society. We have to at least get back to the acknowledgement that there is a truth. That is totally where we are, and it's what many of our institutions, our colleges are teaching, and we're seeing the effects of that now from a policy perspective in Congress, as we have a generation that's come up that where truth is this really moldable thing, and you know, that doesn't mean that I know all of truth. It doesn't mean that any one individual holds it. But if we at least can acknowledge that there is a truth to be found, then you can really have a debate and a discussion about that and work through good faith to get there.
It's time to return to the truth, and that would be returning to God's truth. Congressman Michael Cloud, always great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Good to see you.